The last thing my mother said before I picked up my bag was that family doesn't keep score. I remember the squeak of my shoes on the hospital floor. I remember the overhead fluorescence, the particular flat white of a corridor that hasn't seen daylight in 40 years, and my mother standing just outside the family consultation room with her hands pressed together in front of her chest, like she was about to say grace. My brother was in a room somewhere past the nurse's station. A doctor needed a family match. My mother's eyes were very soft. I had been in that corridor for 4 minutes, and I already knew exactly how this was going to go. There was a family across the corridor, 2 adults who had been there long enough to stop watching the door, and a teenager on her phone with the determined focus of someone trying not to be present in the room she was in. A news segment ran on the wall-mounted television at the end of the hall, sound off. The waiting area chairs were the kind of institutional beige that tells you exactly where you are when you can't quite remember. I had been sitting in one for 4 minutes, watching the nurse's station door swing open and closed, and I had already understood what this visit was going to be. My mother had not asked me once, during that call or the follow-up the next day, how I was doing. She had told me what Kevin needed. That had been the whole of it. I picked up my bag from the chair beside me. I said one thing. Then I walked toward the elevator and pressed the button for the parking garage, and the doors opened and I stepped in. That was last week. Let me tell you how we got there. My name is Renee Calloway. I am 41 years old. I work as a licensed home appraiser out of Delwood, Ohio, which means I spend most of my days in other people's basements with a flashlight and a clipboard, writing down what things are actually worth. I've been doing this for 14 years. I am good at it. I know what load-bearing walls look like. I know what deferred maintenance costs. I know the difference between a house that looks solid and a house that is solid. The work taught me something that didn't have a name for a long time, and then did. The difference between what a thing appears to be worth and what it is actually worth is exactly the distance most people refuse to walk. My daughter Mara was 8 years old when she got sick. She had a blood disorder, the kind that can be managed if you catch it early and can afford the right interventions. We caught it early. The second part was harder. I was raising her alone. Her father had been gone since she was 3, not dramatically, just gradually, and then all the way. I had my income, which was steady but not large, and I had my parents, Dale and Connie Calloway, who lived 40 minutes away in a house I had helped them hold onto through 2 separate stretches when the money ran thin. My brother Kevin lived with them. He was 34 and had been between things, as my mother always put it, for most of the time I could remember. Between jobs. Between plans. Between one version of himself and the next. My mother said this in a tone that asked you not to push on it, and so I never did. When Mara got her diagnosis, I sat in the car outside the pediatric specialist's office for a long time before I called anyone. The parking lot had a single oak tree near the entrance, and I watched a maintenance worker picking up leaves around its base with a grabber tool, 1 leaf at a time, slowly and without hurry. I watched him until I couldn't put off the call any longer. Then I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Renee," she said, and her voice went immediately warm and low, the voice she used when something serious needed attending to. "Tell me." So I told her. The diagnosis, the treatment plan, the specialist's estimate, $23,740 over the first 18 months for the medications and monitoring that weren't covered under my plan. I said I could cover some of it. I said I needed to know if they had anything they could put toward it, a loan, anything, and that I would pay it back. I said I was not asking for a gift. There was a pause. "Of course we want to help," my mother said. "We just need to look at what we have. You know how tight things have been." I said I understood. I said I'd send the paperwork. She said she'd talk to my father. I want to be precise about what the years before that phone call actually looked like, because precision matters here. From the time I started working, at 23, 2 years out of appraisal school, taking every job I could get in the eastern Ohio market, I sent money home. Not every month at first, but often. When my father's truck needed a transmission, I covered half. When the property tax bill came in higher than expected 2 years running and they were short, I wired the difference. When Kevin needed a lawyer for a citation issue I was never given the full details of, I paid the retainer and didn't ask questions. That one I remember specifically. A Friday afternoon call from my mother, her voice careful and me saying fine, just send me the amount. I didn't ask what the citation was for. That was not unusual. With Kevin, you didn't ask. The amounts were never enormous individually. That was partly the point. They were the kind of amounts that feel manageable in the moment and invisible in the rear view. A few hundred here, 1,200 there, one stretch where I sent something every month for 8 months because my father had a health issue that reduced his hours and my mother wasn't working. I didn't keep a running total in my head. I wasn't trying to. It was family. What I did keep, without ever intending it to be evidence, was a ledger. A composition notebook I'd bought to track my own household expenses the year Mara was born, where I'd started jotting down the transfers and loans alongside my own bills, just so I knew where the money had gone, just so my own numbers made sense. Mara got hold of it once when she was about 5 and drew on the cover with a red crayon. She made a shape that might have been a house or might have been a mountain. She told me it was a tree. I kept using it anyway. By the time she got sick, it had 11 years in it. I didn't think of it as a document. I thought of it as a habit. Those years I sent money home, I was also building toward a down payment on a house for Mara and me. I was also saving against an emergency fund that never got quite large enough before the next thing came. The contributions to my parents' household were not a secret. I kept from myself. I knew they were happening, but I had not sat down and added the column until the year Mara got sick, and I needed to understand exactly what I had and where it had gone. I added the column. The number was significant enough that I sat with the notebook open for a while before I closed it. I closed it carefully, like it was something I wasn't ready to put down permanently, and I set it on the counter next to the coffee maker, and then I went to work. My mother called me back 4 days after I sent the paperwork. "We've looked at everything," she said. "We just can't spare it right now, Renee. We're so sorry. You know we would if we could." I was standing in my kitchen. The light was coming through the window above the sink the way it does in late October in Ohio, low and pale and thin, not warm enough to do anything. A cardinal had landed on the back fence and was sitting very still, its red extraordinarily bright against the gray. "Mom," I said. "It's for Mara. We know that, sweetheart. We love Mara. But we don't have it." Something went still in my chest. Not hurt, not the word I might have expected for what I was feeling, just a kind of pressure, like a door being held shut from the other side. I looked at the cardinal. It didn't move. I said all right. I said I'd figure it out. I hung up and stood there until the cardinal flew off, and then I went back to work. I drove to their house the following Saturday. My father was in the living room when I came in, watching a game with the sound low. He didn't get up. My mother brought coffee without being asked, which was what she always did when she knew a conversation was coming. The coffee was her way of announcing that she had already decided this would be a reasonable exchange and that she needed me to agree to those terms before we started. I sat across from them at the kitchen table, and I put the specialist's statement on the table, and I told them the number again, $23,740, and I said I had roughly $14,000 I could pull together without putting my own housing at risk, and I needed the rest. "We heard you the first time," my father said. His voice wasn't unkind. It was just flat, the way a door is flat when it's been shut and latched. "We've been over it. There's nothing there. I've helped cover things here for 11 years, I said. I'm not saying that to fight about it. I'm saying it because I need you to understand this is the one time I'm asking for something back." My mother's expression shifted, not to the thing I'd expected, not right away. To something more practiced. "Nobody asked you to do any of that, Renee. I know nobody asked. And we've always been grateful," my father said. "But we can't manufacture money we don't have. Where did the money go?" I asked. I kept my voice level. "You've both been working. Kevin's been here for years. There's been consistent money coming in from somewhere. I'm asking because I know how to read numbers. Kevin has his own situation," my mother said. Her voice went a degree warmer, which was how she shut things down. "He's going through a lot. We've been helping him get stable. You've always been the strong one. You've always been able to handle things." I looked at her for a moment. "Mara is 8 years old," I said. My father looked at the table. My mother looked at me with an expression I recognized. The one that was meant to communicate that she understood what I was going through and also that this conversation was over. She had been using that expression since I was a teenager. I knew every seam of it. "You're asking us to do something we can't do," she said. "I know that's hard to hear. But being ungrateful for everything we've given you over the years doesn't help anyone." The word landed and sat there. I did not respond to it. I looked at the statement on the table. I picked it up and folded it back into my bag. I folded it slowly, the way you fold something you are going to need to reference again. "Okay," I said. I drove home. 3 weeks later, I found out about Creston Lane. It came from a colleague, another appraiser who worked the Fairview Heights market, who mentioned in passing that she'd done a comp pull on a house on Creston Lane that had sold for $684,000 in September. She mentioned the buyer's name because she'd thought it was unusual to see a cash-adjacent deal at that price point move that fast. No inspection contingency, 30-day close. She mentioned it the way you mention a curiosity, the way something registers as interesting without knowing it matters. Renee Calloway. I let her finish her sentence. I said that was interesting. I said I'd see her at the county meeting Thursday. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the county records office in Linden County for 11 minutes before I went inside. I know it was 11 minutes because I looked at my phone when I parked and again when I opened the car door. I am a person who notes these things. It is occupational. The woman at the records desk was eating a sandwich and didn't look up when I came in, and I stood at the counter and waited, and when she came over I told her what I was looking for, and she took me to the terminal. The property transfer record for 4814 Creston Lane, Fairview Heights, Ohio was 4 pages. I photographed all of them. Sale price, $684,000. Buyer, Renee Calloway. Transfer date, 3 weeks after my mother told me there was nothing there. I drove to Mercy Ridge Medical Center on a Thursday morning. I packed a bag the night before, the kind you pack when you don't know how long something will take. I laid it by the door. I set the ledger on the kitchen counter. I made coffee and drank half of it. I locked the front door behind me. I got on the highway at 6:14 a.m. I took the exit for Columbus. I parked on level 3 of the Mercy Ridge garage. I took the elevator to the main floor. I followed the signs to the family consultation area. My mother was already in the corridor. She looked smaller than I remembered her looking. That was the first thing I registered. The overhead lights in the corridor flattening everything out, and my mother standing with her hands pressed together at her sternum, and the smallness of her. My brother had been admitted 2 days earlier. A blood panel had flagged something that required a family match to move forward with the next stage of treatment. My mother had called me from the waiting room the previous afternoon, her voice doing the low warm thing again, the thing that meant she needed something attended to. She had not asked if I was okay. She had not asked how I was doing. She had said Kevin needs you, and she had said we're all here, and she had said I know you'll do the right thing, Renee, because you always do. Renee, she said now. Thank God. Thank God you came. A nurse moved past us with a cart, shoes quiet on the linoleum. Somewhere past the nurse's station, a monitor beeped in a slow, even rhythm. He needs you, my mother said. The doctor said a sibling match is the best chance. You've always been so healthy. You've always taken care of yourself. She pressed her hands tighter together. We need you to go in and talk to them. Tell them you'll do it. You're the only one who can help him right now. I looked at her. The corridor was cool. The fluorescence made everything the same color as itself, just slightly less. Mom, I said. Do you remember what you told me? When I came to you about Mara's treatment. She blinked. Renee, this isn't. You told me you couldn't spare it. That there was nothing there. I reached into my bag. I want to show you something. I pulled out the ledger, the composition notebook, soft at the corners now, Mara's red crayon lines still visible on the cover where she'd made it hers. I set it on the chair beside me. I opened my phone to the photo I had taken at the Linden County Courthouse Annex, the property transfer record for 4814 Creston Lane, Fairview Heights, Ohio. Sale price, $684,000. Buyer, Renee Calloway. Transfer date, 3 weeks after my mother told me there was nothing there. I turned the phone so she could see the screen. My mother's hands came apart. I laid the ledger open on the chair beside the phone, both of them visible at once. 11 years of transfers in blue ink on one side, the property record on the other. I did not say anything for a moment. I let her look at both of them. $23,740, I said. That's what Mara needed. That's the number I brought to your kitchen table. I did not raise my voice. The corridor was very quiet between the monitor beeps. You bought Kevin a $684,000 house the same month you told me you couldn't spare a cent. Mara didn't make it. My mother opened her mouth. I'm not here to make a trade, I said. I'm not here to negotiate. What you did with your money was your choice. I understand that now. I've understood it for a long time. But I need you to understand that I don't owe Kevin my body because you've decided family helps family when it's convenient. I picked up the ledger and slid it back into my bag. I've given this family everything I had for 11 years. I gave it freely. I have no quarrel with that. Something settled low in my sternum. Not the absence of something, just a stillness, like a room after the door finally closes. But I'm not giving anything else. I picked up my bag. I put it on my shoulder. So that's a no, I said. Tell the doctor. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button. The doors opened, and I stepped in, and the last thing I saw before the doors closed was my mother standing in the corridor with her hands at her sides and the fluorescent light making everything the same flat color. That was 8 months ago. I did not hear from my mother for 6 weeks after Mercy Ridge. Then she sent a text. A long one, the kind that takes up 3 screens, the kind that uses the word perspective 4 times and the word context twice and never once uses the word Mara. I read it at my kitchen table in the morning, with my coffee going cold next to the window. I read it all the way through. Then I set my phone face down. I picked up the ledger instead. I had moved it from the counter to the drawer in my desk, the shallow one where I keep things I might need to reference again. That morning I took it out and spent an hour going through it, not to add anything, just to read it. Every transfer logged in blue ink, the dates, the amounts, the short notes I'd written to remind myself what each one was for. Mara's crayon lines on the cover, the red wax slightly raised where she'd pressed hard. I ran my thumb across them the way I always did. Then I filed the ledger in the back of the drawer behind my property licensing documents, and I went to work. Kevin left Mercy Ridge 2 weeks after I did. I don't know the outcome of his treatment in detail. I was not kept in that information loop, which was fine. I heard through a cousin that he was home, that things had gone reasonably well, that he was back at Creston Lane. I heard through the same cousin that my parents had told people I'd refused to help during a family emergency. They used the word selfish. They used the word ungrateful. I noted that and moved on. I closed on a house of my own in Delwood 4 months ago. A 1,940-square-foot colonial on a street called Birch Terrace, 3 blocks from a park Mara used to like. I paid $387,500. I did the inspection myself, which appraisers aren't supposed to do for their own purchases, so I hired a colleague and stood outside on the driveway while he went through the basement, and then I went through it again myself afterward because I needed to know what I was holding. He found 2 things worth noting. A hairline crack along the east foundation wall that had been there long enough to be stable, and evidence of a previous roof leak in the attic that had been properly repaired. Neither was a deal-breaker. Both were things I had already priced in. The structure is sound. That's what I kept coming back to. The load-bearing walls are where they're supposed to be. Some people learn what family means from the people who were supposed to teach them. Others learn it by watching what happens when those people think no one is keeping score. Every morning I unlock the front door of my own house with my own key. I feel the resistance in the deadbolt, that small, specific click when the mechanism releases, and then the door swings open. The ledger is in the desk drawer inside. I don't take it out every day. I don't need to. I know what's in it. If this story made you think of someone who needed to hear it, share it with them. Sometimes the thing that helps people find the door isn't advice. It's just knowing someone else found theirs first.